Well, hi everybody, welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. It's one of the most iconic photos ever taken. December 17, 1903, not far from Kill Devil Hill in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The older brother, Wilbur, had won the coin toss a few days before, but a gust of wind had caused some minor damage, and today it was Orville's turn. Lying flat on the lower wing of the first airplane in the world, named appropriately enough the Flyer, his hips in a cradle that warped the wings for roll control, and his hand on the stick controlling the forward elevators called a canard, with Brother Wilbur watching just a second or two after the picture was taken, running with the Flyer to keep the wings level, the instant of mankind's first controllable heavier-than-air flight. Now, neither of them could have done it alone. Wilbur and Orville used to argue so frequently and so vehemently that it was not uncommon for each to have been convinced of the other's position, and the argument continued unabated, with the combatants having switched sides. But it was this interplay that made powered flight possible, the contentiousness, but also the familiarity, the support, and ultimately the love for each other and their common vision that kept the whole thing going through brutal disappointment, injury, and a near-biblical plague of mosquitoes that almost drove them mad with pain and lack of sleep. Each brother kept the other one going and brought out his best. This is a very rare dynamic and a very powerful one, powerful enough in this case to have allowed two unknown middle-class bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio to succeed where people, famous and famously well-connected people, like Smithsonian director Samuel Langley and his tens of thousands of dollars of government money, well, his efforts simply went kersplash into the Potomac River. Now, it's a rare dynamic, but it's not completely unique, and I know this to be true because it's become the signal honor of my life to have gotten to be friends with another pair of brothers with this Wright stuff. These Wright brothers are named Bert and Dick Rutan. Now, to list everything they've accomplished in aviation would take hours, so let's just focus, just as an example of this Wright brothers dynamic, on perhaps the greatest human story in all of aviation, the flight of the Voyager aircraft on December 14, 1986. Now, on that cold morning, Voyager took off to the west from Edwards Air Force Base, and 9 days, 3 hours, and 44 seconds later, it arrived from the east, having flown all the way around the world without stopping and without being refueled in flight. It was the last of the firsts in aviation. Dick Rutan is a war hero. 325 missions in Vietnam in the F-100 with the Purple Heart, the Silver Star, five Distinguished Flying Cross Awards, and he's the recipient of the Air Medal 16 times. Now, 5 years younger is his brother Bert, one of the most successful and beyond any question whatsoever, the most innovative aircraft designer in the history of the world. Bert has designed 367 different aircraft concepts, of which a mind-boggling 45 different types have actually been built and flown. He doesn't just design aircraft either. In the early days of the new millennium, he and his company, Scaled Composites, designed and built Spaceship One and its carrier ship White Knight One, and they flew it into, by God, outer space, but that's another story. So back to Voyager. And one day in a restaurant in Mojave, California, Bert mentioned to his older brother that he believed he could build an airplane that could fly around the world unrefueled. On the spot, he sketched a design on a napkin, which is now in the Smithsonian Institution. This sketch of his, which was done immediately after, is practically a blueprint. He does it all in his head, kind of like Mozart. After 5 years of struggling, Bert, Dick, and Voyager co-pilot Gina Yeager raised enough money from individual small backers to build this flying fuel tank with an interior no larger than a telephone booth, called the Voyager. Now, in order to make it fly all the way around the world, every single ounce had to go to fuel at the expense of structural strength. And so even though she was made out of the strongest and lightest material on Earth, then new carbon fiber, Voyager, when fully loaded with fuel, was in fact an extremely fragile and very unstable airplane. It was, in a word, damn dangerous to fly. So dangerous, in fact, that war hero Dick Rutan was convinced that the chances were excellent that he was going to die in that airplane. In fact, on the morning of the flight, the first and only fully fueled attempt to fly the Voyager, the weight of the fuel so distorted the airframe that Dick felt a moment of joy. It's the kind of reprieve of a condemned man when the telephone rings in the execution chamber, when he could not get the tiny canopy secured over his head. But using that as a way out would be the coward's way out, and Dick Rutan was never a coward. He jiggled that canopy until he got it secured, and then after using over 2 minutes of takeoff roll and 14,600 of the 15,000 feet of runway at Edwards Air Force Base, he flew Voyager off into the west, with Bert following in a chase plane, watching his brother disappear over the Pacific and wondering if he'd ever see him again. 9 days later, Searching for him in the eastern darkness, Bert saw a single aircraft strobe pulsing in the distance. Unsure if it was Voyager, Bert radioed for Dick to turn off the strobe, and when that little spark winked out, Bert burst into tears. They'd done it. They are the Wright brothers. And, like their predecessors, they're actually triplets. Everybody knows about Wilbur and Orville, but there was a third brother, unrelated by blood, but an essential brother nevertheless. His name was Charlie Taylor. He was a mechanic who, when not one single person in the world could build an engine light enough and powerful enough to fly, Charlie Taylor simply walked into the shop in Dayton, sat down, and built it. He never left. He stayed with the Wrights for the rest of their careers. There would have not been any flying that day. There would have been no Wright brothers without that third brother, Charlie Taylor. Likewise, these modern brothers are really triplets as well. Mike Melville is a naturalized U.S. citizen originally from South Africa. He was just turning a lathe in Indiana when he bought one of Bert's first set of plans, and due to his mechanical skill, he was the first one to finish. Like Charlie Taylor, he stopped by to ask a few questions and he never left. He and Dick built twin long-easies designed by Bert. I own one of these myself. And they flew them around the world. It was Mike who flew the chase plane that carried Bert and him far out over the Pacific to see Voyager off. And Mike was flying the chase plane and crying too when that spark reappeared in the east. Oh, and parenthetically, this quiet, humble, incredibly skilled pilot who's been Bert and Dick Rutan's third brother became in 2004 the world's first civilian astronaut. Flying once without instruments and again in a savage, uncontrolled role into, by God, outer space on raw skill and courage alone. These Wright brothers are not just people. Each of them represents an ideal. While each has qualities of the other, you might say that each one encompasses a specific ideal, a specific cardinal virtue, and they are intelligence, perseverance, and courage. It's the unique American combination. It's the right stuff. Now, you scuff these virtues up a little bit, get their hands a little dirty, and what you're left with are brains, hard work, and guts. These three ideals, these three right virtues, brains, hard work, and guts, they'll get you anywhere. They'll get you above the ground at Kill Devil Hill, and then they'll take you sipping cocktails on a 747 bound for Paris. They'll get you around the world on a single tank of gas. They'll get you into outer space. They'll even put you on the moon. When I was with Bert and Dick and Mike at Oshkosh this year, I saw the F-35 fighter. Now, I've been hard on that airplane. Who knows? Maybe it's going to work after all. Sure looks cool. But it costs $1 trillion. Now, for 1% of that, for $10 billion, these Wright brothers, brains, hard work, and guts, could have us permanently on the moon and then out to Mars and back several times. 10% of that cost, just build 9 F-35s instead of every 10, and you'd have $100 billion, which, in the hands of Bert and Dick and Mike or Elon Musk or any of the other Wright brothers out there, well, we'd be exploring and colonizing the solar system forever. We'd never come back. Intelligence, perseverance, and courage. Brains, hard work, and guts. It's not too late, you know. It's never too late for that spark to reappear in those dark skies just before the dawn.